I want you to close your eyes for a second. Just, imagine stepping out of a subway station and directly into the streets of Tokyo.
Right into the thick of it.
Exactly. The calendar says it's May 2026, and the weather has hit that well, that incredibly narrow transitional sweet spot. The spring chill is finally gone, but that heavy, oppressive summer humidity hasn't quite locked in yet.
Well, it's the best time to be there.
It really is. And the city around you, it is absolutely humming. You can feel this palpable kinetic energy vibrating right through the pavement. Yeah. The neon signs in Shinjuku are buzzing. The crowds at Shibuya Crossing are moving with that famous mathematically precise Tokyo flow. But, and this is the key, there's something else hanging in the air.
A kind of tension.
Yes, attention and anticipation. Because this hyper-modern metropolis, a place defined by bullet trains and robotics and glass skyscrapers, it's about to undergo a massive citywide metamorphosis.
It really is a complete functional surrender. We are looking at a month where the modern, highly optimized infrastructure of one of the world's most advanced economies essentially yields the right of way to, 1,000-year-old Shinto spirits.
Wow.
Yeah, and thunderous taiko drums and rituals that were codified centuries before Tokyo was even called Tokyo.
Yeah.
It's a period where the barrier between the secular modern world and the ancient sacred world becomes incredibly porous.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are going to equip you with the ultimate insider's guide to decoding Tokyo's most intense, culturally saturated month.
It's a lot to navigate.
It's a ton. We are taking a massive stack of historical texts, sociological research, biomechanical analyses of ancient sports, and, hard logistical data, and we are distilling it all down so you can actually understand what we are calling the festival saturation of May 2026. We are going to explore the hidden Shinto mechanics behind these massive street parties. We're going to look at the deeply physical, high-stakes universe of the May Grand Sumo tournament, and crucially, we are going to tear down the sheer survival logistics of navigating the notorious Golden Week crowds.
What's fascinating here is the underlying philosophical thread connecting all these seemingly disparate events. When you look closely at Tokyo in May, you aren't just seeing isolated holidays. You're witnessing a profound mechanism of cultural preservation. You are seeing the fascinating syncretism, the intentional blending and blurring of indigenous Shinto beliefs and imported Buddhist traditions.
It's everywhere.
It really is. You're seeing the quiet, orderly reverence of daily temple life deliberately exploded into rowdy, deeply physical street combat and then channeled directly into the sacred dirt of a sumo ring.
Right.
Understanding the historical utility of that contrast is the key to truly experiencing this city.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can get into the sacred festivals or, the complex biomechanics of sumo wrestlers or the theology of the shrines, we really need to address the sheer, overwhelming physical reality of the environment you are walking into.
And logistics.
The brutal logistics. If you touch down at Haneda or Narita Airport at the beginning of May, you are stepping right into the crucible. You are walking into Golden Week.
Yeah.
And I want to get past the basic definition of, it's a busy travel week. Why does the specific week physically break the Japanese transit system every year?
Well, it breaks the system because it is a highly concentrated, state-engineered mass migration.
Okay.
We're looking at a period from April 29th to May 6th, and it encompasses 4 distinct national holidays: Showa Day, Constitution Memorial Day, Greenery Day, and Children's Day.
Right, all back to back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the reason it creates such a logistical bottleneck goes deep into Japanese post-war labor sociology. Historically, Japan has an incredibly intense corporate culture. There is a deeply ingrained societal and professional friction against taking individual unilateral time off.
It's just not done.
Right, it's seen as disrupting the harmony of the team, the wa. So, to prevent mass burnout and stimulate the domestic leisure economy, the government essentially had to force the issue by clustering these national holidays together.
Oh, I see.
They designed a nationwide pause where the social guilt of not working is temporarily suspended because, everyone else is also not working.
I see the logic, but the physical manifestation of that policy is terrifying. A nationwide rest sounds great on paper, but in practice it means millions of domestic travelers are suddenly mobilized on the exact same day. trying to picture the scale here. It's Thanksgiving travel in the United States, but instead of being spread across thousands of miles of highways and distinct regional hubs, it is compressed into a hyper-dense, mountainous archipelago. And everyone is trying to move at 300 kilometers per hour on the exact same railway spine.
The Thanksgiving analogy works mathematically, for sure, but we have to factor in the extreme efficiency of the Japanese rail network, which ironically makes the crush more intense.
Wait, really? Because it works so well?
Yeah, exactly. The Shinkansen and the bullet trains operate on a schedule measured in seconds. During Golden Week, they're operating at maximum capacity, sometimes pushing 150 to 200% of their design passenger load in the non-reserved cars.
200%? That's insane.
It's shoulder to shoulder. You are looking at platforms completely packed, train station corridors transformed into slow-moving rivers of humanity. Hotel availability simply evaporates, and dynamic pricing algorithms push the remaining rooms to 2 or 3 times their normal rate.
Wow.
It requires a complete recalibration of your spatial awareness.
Which naturally leads to a really tough question. If the hotels are booked and the Shinkansen feels like a pressure cooker, what is the strategic move? I imagine a lot of people might look at that data and think, I should just completely avoid Japan in early May. But that means missing out on some of the most culturally rich events of the year. So how do you actually hack Golden Week?
You don't avoid it. You invert your strategy. The first critical error travelers make is assuming the Japan Rail Pass is a magic ticket.
Oh, yeah.
It is not. During Golden Week, you cannot just walk up to a station, flash a pass, and expect to board a train to Kyoto.
Not going to happen.
Nope. You must interact with the JR online booking systems weeks before you even cross the Japanese border to secure reserved seating. But more importantly, the strategic move within the cities themselves is temporal. You have to beat the demographic wave.
Right, because millions of domestic tourists are treating this as a vacation. They are, sleeping in, having a leisurely hotel breakfast, and hitting the major shrines around 9:30 or 10:00 a.m.
Precisely. If your goal is to experience the Meiji Shrine or the bamboo groves of Arashiyama without feeling like you are in a mosh pit, your alarm needs to go off at 5 a.m.
Ouch.
It is, but it's worth it. If you are on the ground at these sites, between 6:00 and 7:00 a.m., you get the pristine atmospheric experience. By 9:00 a.m., the geometry of the space fundamentally changes, and you need to retreat to secondary, less prominent neighborhoods.
I want to pull on a logistical thread here that completely changes the game, and that's luggage. Moving between cities during Golden Week with massive roller bags seems like a literal impossibility if the trains are at 150% capacity.
It's a nightmare.
But Japan has an infrastructure cheat code for this, don't they? The Takuban system.
The Yamato transport system, universally known by its black cat logo, is an absolute marvel of civic logistics. In most Western countries, shipping a heavy suitcase from a hotel in New York to a hotel in Chicago is prohibitively expensive and, frankly, highly unreliable.
Right.
In Japan, the Takuba network is fully integrated into the hospitality sector. For roughly $15 to $20, you drop your heavy luggage at your Tokyo hotel front desk in the evening. You board the crowded Shinkansen the next morning carrying nothing but a small day pack, completely unburdened.
Amazing.
And when you check into your hotel in Kyoto or Osaka that night, your luggage is already sitting inside your room.
That's just...
It utilizes an incredibly dense network of localized distribution centers that run overnight, completely bypassing the passenger rail bottlenecks.
That is essentially logistical magic. And it's crucial because the weather in May requires you to carry a weirdly diverse set of gear.
But the weather is tricky.
It's early summer, so you step out into what feels like a perfectly comfortable 70 degrees Fahrenheit. But the UV index in Tokyo in May is highly deceptive.
Very much so.
The solar radiation is surprisingly intense, so you need a hat and sunscreen. But you also have the tsuyu, the approaching rainy season, meaning you could be hit by a sudden localized downpour requiring a portable umbrella.
Exactly.
Trying to juggle all of that while dragging a 50-pound suitcase through a crowded Shinjuku station is a recipe for a meltdown.
And if the friction of the major cities still feels too high, the ultimate Golden Week hack is geographical arbitrage.
I like that term.
The domestic crowds are flowing toward the famous historical capitals, Kyoto, Nara, Kamakura. To find peace, you move perpendicularly to that flow.
Okay, where to?
You head to the deep mountains of Saitama, to the Chichibu region where the local trains run slowly through incredibly lush, quiet valleys, or you cross Tokyo Bay into the Chiba Prefecture.
Okay.
Near Hamakanaya, you can hike Mount Nokogiri. There is a 31-meter-tall ancient Buddha statue carved directly into the granite of the mountain, and during Golden Week, while Kyoto is gridlocked, you might be one of only a few dozen people standing in front of it.
I love the idea of geographical arbitrage. You let everyone else fight over the premium real estate while you buy up the undervalued, quiet experiences. But let's accelerate the timeline. Golden Week ends around May 6th. The domestic workforce returns to their offices. You would assume the city takes a collective breath and quiets down.
You would assume that, yes.
But structurally, Tokyo in mid-May actually ratchets the intensity up. We transition from a travel crush into the festival cluster.
This is where we see that profound shift from modern infrastructure to ancient ritual. The absolute epicenter of this shift is the Sanja Matsuri, pulling roughly 2 million people into the Asakusa district over the third weekend of May, so May 15th through the 17th in 2026.
Here's where it gets really interesting. 2 million people descending on a single neighborhood over 3 days. To grasp why this specific festival commands that kind of gravity, we really need to dig into the theological mechanics of it. Because the origin story of Sanja Matsuri is essentially a masterclass in religious syncretism. It dates back to the year 628 AD.
Yes, the historical record points to two fishermen brothers, Hinokuma Haminari and Hinokuma Takanari. They were working the waters of the Sumida River early one morning, and their nets pulled up a small golden statuette.
Okay.
It wasn't just any figure. It was a depiction of the Bodhisattva canon, the Buddhist deity of ultimate compassion and mercy.
But these were 7th century fishermen. They didn't have the theological framework to understand what they had just pulled out of the mud.
Right, they had no idea.
So they bring it to the local village chief, a highly educated man named Hajino Nakatomo. He immediately recognizes the profound significance of the canon statue. He essentially converts the two brothers to Buddhism on the spot, remakes his own home into a small temple to house the deity, and the three of them dedicate their lives to this faith.
Which is an incredible origin.
And that tiny makeshift temple eventually evolves over centuries into Sensoji, which is today the oldest, largest, and most culturally significant Buddhist temple in Tokyo.
And this is where the syncretism, the specific theological blending, takes over. What's fascinating here is that Sanja Matsuri literally translates to the Three Shrine Festival. But it is not a Buddhist festival.
Wait, it's not.
No, it is a massive, roaring Shinto festival held specifically to honor the spirits, the kami, of those three men who founded a Buddhist temple.
That's wild.
It operates on a highly specific Japanese theological concept known as Hanji Suijaku, which basically argues that local Shinto deities are actually the physical manifestations of universal Buddhist entities.
I see.
So you have the Asakusa Shinto shrine physically attached to the Sensoji Buddhist temple complex, sharing the exact same geographic footprint and the exact same origin story. The indigenous animism and the imported theology are structurally inseparable.
And they do not celebrate that shared history quietly. The physical manifestation of this theology is wild. Over the course of the weekend, the neighborhood associations bring out over 100 portable Shinto shrines called mikoshi.
Right.
But the absolute gravitational centers of the festival are the three Hansha mikoshi, the main shrines that come out on Sunday. Let's talk about the physics of these objects because it blows my mind. They are essentially miniature buildings made of solid black lacquered wood, heavily armored with solid gold sculptures, gold leaf, and brass fittings.
The mass of these objects is staggering. A single Hansha mikoshi weighs approximately 1 metric ton.
A ton.
A full ton. To put a financial perspective on it, the craftsmanship and materials require an investment of roughly $390,000 per shrine.
A 1-ton, $400,000 piece of sacred architecture. And they don't put it on wheels, they mount it on a grid of 4 massive, solid wooden poles lashed together with incredibly thick hemp rope.
Nope, it's all human power.
I was doing the math on this. If it weighs a ton and you have about 40 people underneath it carrying it, that's 50 pounds per person, which sounds manageable in a gym, but they aren't walking on a flat treadmill.
Not at all.
They are moving through packed, uneven streets. The dynamic load shifts constantly. If the people in the front stumble, the weight instantly transfers, and suddenly you have 200 pounds of pressure driving into your collarbone.
It is incredibly dangerous, and the physical toll on the carriers is severe. But the danger is amplified by the ritual intent. They aren't just trying to safely transport this 1-ton object from point A to point B. They're actively, violently bouncing it.
Bouncing it.
Yes, the carriers, dressed in traditional happy coats or stripped down to just the fundoshi loincloths, heave the massive structure up and down in a rhythmic, aggressive motion, surrounded by the deafening sound of wooden flutes and taiko drums.
And this is the part I really had to grapple with. Why? It seems completely counterintuitive to take your most sacred, expensive religious artifact and violently thrash it around within inches of street-side noodle shops and concrete electrical poles. Is it just for the spectacle?
It is entirely theological. This violent shaking is a highly specific ritual mechanism called tamafuri, which translates to soul swaying or spirit shaking.
Okay.
In Shinto cosmology, the kami, the spirit of the deity temporarily housed inside the mikoshi, needs to be activated. By subjecting the shrine to intense kinetic energy, by violently rocking and agitating it, you are waking the spirit up.
Waking it up. That makes sense.
You are artificially amplifying its power. The more violently the mikoshi is tossed, the more concentrated the divine energy becomes, and as they parade this highly charged spiritual battery through the streets, it radiates that intensified good fortune, prosperity, and protection outward into the local businesses and homes.
Okay, so the kinetic energy directly correlates to the spiritual output. The wilder they get, the more blessings they're throwing into the crowd like a centrifuge.
Exactly.
That perfectly explains why the environment gets so aggressive. It's not just a parade, it's a spiritual power plant. And it gets so intense that you see what is essentially Mikoshi jousting.
Oh, yeah.
Even though the police strictly prohibit it, you will see men riding on top of the carrying poles, screaming directions, trying to steer this one-ton wrecking ball of blessings, and sometimes rival neighborhood groups will aggressively charge and bump their Mikoshi against each other to prove whose spirit is more vital.
It is a profound display of physical dominance and community pride. And because of that physical rawness, the Sanja Matsuri serves another fascinating sociological function. It is one of the extremely rare public occasions in modern Japan where the yakuza, the organized crime syndicates, operate openly in the daylight.
This is wild to me. Japan is famously strict about organized crime. You can get banned from a public bathhouse just for having a small tattoo.
Yeah.
How are syndicate members allowed to openly participate in a major religious festival?
Well, it comes down to the deep historical roots of the shiramachi, the traditional low city or downtown working-class neighborhoods of Tokyo. Historically, the yakuza groups were deeply embedded in these local economies, running the festival stalls, managing the gambling, and acting as unofficial neighborhood enforcers.
Right.
That historical social contract still faintly exists during the Matsuri. The syndicates view the carrying of the mikoshi as a demonstration of their endurance and their bond to the local soil.
I see.
It is the one time you will see these men strip down to their fundoshi to proudly display their full-body urzumi tattoos, which are usually hidden beneath business suits as they take the brunt of a one-ton shrine on their shoulders. The local police essentially establish a temporary, highly monitored truce for the sake of the festival's historical integrity.
The sensory overload of this must be unimaginable. You have 2 million people, the thunderous chanting of washoi, washoi, the heavy scent of grilled yakitori and octopus from the street stalls mixing with incense, and these massive golden one-ton shrines surfing above a sea of fully tattooed men. It's a lot to process.
If you are a tourist trying to navigate this on Sunday, May 17th, how do you even approach it without getting physically crushed?
The tactical approach requires understanding the festival's rhythm. The absolute peak of kinetic energy occurs very early on Sunday morning, around 6:00 a.m., during the Miyadashi.
Okay, the breakout.
Right. This is the moment the 3 main Hansha Mikoshi violently break out of the Asakusa shrine grounds to begin their routes. The carriers are completely fresh, and the aggression is at its maximum. However, the compression of the crowd is so severe and so dangerous that local authorities often barricade the main gates, completely locking out casual spectators.
So don't try to get in there.
Definitely not. A much smarter strategy for a visitor is to position yourself further down the route later in the morning. Find a wide intersection and let the mikoshi come to you. Or anchor yourself near the Kaminaramon, the famous Thunder Gate, with the massive red lantern at the entrance of Sensache. The visual juxtaposition of the violent shrine passing under that ancient gate is the defining image of the weekend. And a major logistical note: do not try to use Asakusa's subway station. The sheer density of human bodies above ground causes the underground transit infrastructure to choke. You have to ride the subway to a peripheral station like Tawaramachi or Kurmai and walk the remaining distance.
Very true. It is also vital to recognize that the Sanja Matsuri isn't purely chaos.
Oh.
Yeah, the Friday of the festival weekend offers a completely different atmospheric pressure. They hold the Daiguretsu, which is a massive, highly orderly procession of priests, city officials, geisha, and musicians, all dressed in immaculate, authentic Edo period garments.
A totally different vibe.
Completely. Inside the shrine, they perform the Binzasara dance. an ancient hypnotic ritual using a very strange wooden percussion instrument that ripples like a snake, designed to pray for agricultural bounty. It's a moment of profound, eerie serenity before the weekend explosion.
So, Sanja Matsuri is the rowdy, untamed manifestation of Tokyo's spirit. But we can't look at Tokyo in May without looking at its structural counterweight. If Sanja is the explosive younger sibling, we need to talk about the Kanda Matsuri, which occupies a totally different socio-political space, and in May 2026 offers a highly specific experience.
The Kanda Matsuri is anchored at the Kanda Myojin Shrine, geographically positioned near Akihabara, the modern electronics and anime district. Along with the Sanja Matsuri and the Fukugawa Matsuri, it holds the title as one of the 3 great Shinto festivals of Edo.
Right.
But unlike Sanja, which is rooted in working-class fisherman lore, Kanda Matsuri is intrinsically tied to the absolute apex of military and political power. It is tied to Tokugawa Ieyasu.
The first shogun, the man who finally unified Japan after centuries of civil war.
Exactly. Before the pivotal Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, which essentially handed Ieyasu control of the entire country, he ordered his retainers to pray for divine favor and victory, specifically at the Kanda Myojin Shrine.
So it was a big deal for him.
Huge. When he won and established the 250-year reign of the Edo shogunate, he didn't forget the shrine. He poured immense wealth into it, elevating its status dramatically. Because of this direct imperial patronage, the Kanda Matsuri evolved into the Tenka Matsuri, or the Unification Festival. It was heavily funded and protected by the military government itself.
Which means the scale of it is traditionally massive. When it runs at full capacity, you have a 500-person procession marching through the absolute center of Tokyo. You have people in Heian period aristocratic silks riding on horseback past the neon arcades of Akihabara and then marching directly into Otemachi, which is the ultra-modern glass and steel Wall Street of Tokyo.
The contrast is incredible.
It's amazing. They even pull these massive multi-story floats, including one designed like a giant mythological catfish, which ties into the ancient belief that earthquakes were caused by a giant catfish thrashing in the mud beneath Japan.
That is the grand spectacle, yes. However, understanding the underlying mechanics of this festival is critical for anyone planning a trip in 2026.
Because 2026 is special.
Right. The Kanda Matsuri does not run at full capacity every year. It operates on a very strict biennial cycle. The massive city-paralyzing procession you just described, the Shinkosai, is only executed in odd-numbered years.
So 2026 is an even year. What is the mechanism here? Why do they turn off one of the biggest festivals in the country every other year? Did the shogunate just get tired of funding it?
That is actually precisely the reason. During the Edo period, the sheer economic burden of constantly one-upping the previous year's festival was bankrupting the local merchants and draining the shogunate's coffers.
Oh, wow.
Furthermore, the rivalry between Kanda Matsuri and the Sanja Matsuri was getting violently out of hand. So the shogunate stepped in and legally mandated that the 2 great festivals must alternate years to stabilize the municipal economy. Therefore, 2026, being an even year, is designated as a Keiji Matsuri, a shadow festival.
A shadow festival. I love the terminology, but it sounds like you were getting a diminished B-tier experience.
It is not a lesser experience. It is an inverted experience. In an odd year, the energy flows outward across the city center. In a shadow festival year, the energy collapses inward.
What does that look like on the ground?
The massive 500-person Metropolitan Parade is canceled. Instead, the spiritual focus returns entirely to the local parishes, the Ujiko neighborhoods immediately surrounding the Kanda Myojin Shrine. The community associations still bring out their local mikoshi, but they parade them through the narrow back streets and alleyways of their own neighborhoods, rather than shutting down the main financial arteries of the city.
Let's consider the logistics of this for a traveler. If you are in Tokyo over the weekend of May 15th to 17th in 2026, you already have the 2 million people and the violently bouncing mikoshi of the Sanja Matsuri and Asakusa.
That's a lot on its own.
Trying to navigate a second massive city halting parade across town would be a logistical nightmare. The Shadow Festival actually sounds like an incredible release valve.
It is a massive strategic advantage. The Shadow Festival allows you to experience the solemnity of the Kanda Myojin Shrine, witness highly authentic Shinto rituals like the Reitai Sai ceremony, where shrine maidens perform ancient dances to appease the kami.
Beautiful.
And you can watch the local mikoshi navigating the tight corners of Akihabara. You get an incredibly intimate, historically rich Shinto experience without the crushing gridlock and overwhelming crowd psychology of the main year. It is highly accessible.
So we have the Shinto theology tearing through the streets, either violently in Asakusa or intimately in Kanda. But what's really fascinating, and this is the core of our deep dive today, is that these rituals are not confined to the shrines or the streets.
No, they are not.
This exact same Shinto theology, the exact same concepts of purification and kami, are literally built into the soil of Japan's most famous sporting event. If we want to understand Tokyo in May, we have to look at the May Grand Sumo tournament.
The transition from watching a neighborhood heave a Shinto mikoshi to watching two colossal athletes collide in an arena is conceptually seamless. Sumo is not merely a combat sport. It is a highly codified, physically punishing religious rite.
Right.
It is never decoupled from its Shinto origins. When you secure a ticket to the Natsubasho, the summer tournament held at the Ryogoku Kokugikan from May 10th through the 24th in 2026, you're entering a sacred space.
Let's trace that evolution because it explains everything about how the sport functions today. Sumo didn't start as entertainment. It started in agricultural antiquity as a literal test of strength performed to entertain and appease the kami to guarantee a bountiful harvest.
Exactly.
If the wrestling was fierce, the gods were pleased and the crops would grow. Then, as Japan militarized, the samurai class co-opted it. It became brutal, hand-to-hand combat training for the Bushi warriors on the battlefield. It wasn't until the long peace of the Edo period that it transitioned into a spectator sport, but they stubbornly refused to strip away the sacred architecture.
The physical environment of the arena is a testament to that refusal. The ring itself, the doyo, is not just a platform. It is consecrated ground. It is constructed entirely of a specific mixture of clay and sand.
Oh, I didn't realize it was specific like that.
It is. And before the 15-day tournament begins, top-ranking Shinto priests perform the doyo matsuri ceremony. They physically purify the ring, and then they bury specific offerings directly into the center of the clay salt, washed kelp, dried chestnut, and sekisek to appease the spirits of the earth.
That's fascinating.
Suspended above the ring is a massive, ornate roof called the suryon, which is architecturally identical to the roof of a Shinto shrine, complete with 4 giant tassels representing the 4 seasons and the 4 guardian spirits.
And the participants themselves are essentially acting as priests. When we watch a sumo match on television, the most iconic image is the wrestler grabbing a handful of coarse salt and throwing it high into the air over the dirt.
Right, the salt throw.
That isn't for grip. That is a direct continuation of the Shinto purification ritual, cleansing the ring of malevolent spirits before blood is drawn. And the referee, the gyoji, is dressed in incredibly elaborate silk robes modeled on the hunting gear of the Ashikaga period nobility. But the wildest detail is what the head referee carries. Tucked into his belt is a tanto, a short wooden dagger.
The symbolism of the tanto is incredibly heavy. It signifies the absolute gravity of the gyoji's decisions. By wearing the dagger, the referee is historically communicating that he is prepared to commit seppuku ritual suicide if he makes an incorrect call that alters the outcome of a match.
I mean, that is just intense.
Well, no referee actually commits seppuku today. If a major call is overturned by the judges, the head referee is expected to submit a formal letter of resignation to the Sumo Association out of shame.
The psychological pressure is astronomical, and that pressure extends tenfold to the wrestlers themselves. Let's look at the mechanics of the tournament. You have a 15-day marathon. Getting tickets is essentially a bloodbath. They go on sale exactly a month prior, around April 4th, and the stadium sells out in minutes.
Minutes, literally.
If you get in, you are watching a sport governed by the Banzuke, which is the official ranking system. I was trying to wrap my head around the Banzuke. It's almost like the relegation system in European soccer leagues, right? Where the bottom teams get kicked down to a lower league.
It is similar to European relegation, but the stakes are infinitely more immediate and existential. The Banzuke is a pure, ruthless meritocracy updated every 2 months.
Every 2 months.
Yes. A wrestler's rank dictates every single aspect of their existence within the sumo stable, the heya. If you are in the lower ranks, you wake up at dawn, you clean the stables, you cook the meals, and you are not allowed to wear silk clothing or wooden sandals.
Wow, it's really a hard life.
It is. If you reach the elite top division, the Mikuchi, you receive a massive salary, a private room, junior wrestlers to act as your personal servants, and immense societal prestige.
And that entire hierarchy hinges on a single mathematical threshold. 8 wins. Over the 15 days of the tournament, a wrestler fights once a day. If they secure 8 wins, they achieve a kachikoshi, a winning record, and they ascend the ranks, gaining wealth and status.
But if they don't?
Right. If they suffer 8 losses, a makekoshi, they plummet down the ranks. A top-tier wrestler who suffers an injury or a bad streak can literally lose their salary, their private room, and be forced back into servitude cooking meals for the younger guys.
Which is why the final days of the May tournament, particularly Sunday, May 24th, are suffocatingly tense. By day 14 or 15, you have massive men stepping into the clay ring, sitting on a 7-7 record.
Man.
One bout will determine whether they maintain their livelihood or fall into disgrace. They're fighting for their economic survival.
So when that tension explodes, what are we actually watching in the ring? The bouts themselves are famously brief. I've seen statistics showing the average match lasts less than 10 seconds. Sometimes it's over in 3.
The brevity is deceiving. You are watching two men, frequently weighing well over 300 pounds, starting from a dead sprint a few feet apart. The collision at the tashi-ai, the initial charge, generates the kinetic impact of a low-speed car crash.
Just massive force.
Exactly. The rules are starkly simple. You lose if you are forced out of the circular ring, or if any part of your body other than the soles of your feet touches the dirt. But within that brutal simplicity, the Japan Sumo Association officially recognizes 82 distinct winning techniques, the kemurite.
The biomechanics of these techniques are fascinating. It's not just two guys pushing each other blindly. Take the yorikiri, the frontal force out, which is the most common move. To the untrained eye, it looks like a bulldozer pushing a boulder. But mechanically, the attacking wrestler is driving their arms under the opponent's armpits to secure a deep, two-handed grip on the marashi, the heavy silk belt. By lifting upward on the belt while driving forward, they completely alter the opponent's center of gravity. They turn a 300-pound, perfectly grounded athlete into an unbalanced pendulum, making them incredibly easy to march out of the ring.
Contrast that with the oshidashi, the push-out. This relies purely on concussive strikes and rapid hand thrusts to the opponent's chest and neck. The wrestler refuses to grab the belt, instead using rapid-fire strikes to keep the opponent off balance and shove them backward over the straw bales.
So it's more striking.
Exactly. And then you have the spectacular throws, the nage, where a lighter, more agile wrestler will absorb the forward momentum of a heavier opponent, pivot on a dime, and use centrifugal force to throw a 400-pound man face-first into the clay.
But the physical violence is only half the battle. The psychological warfare beforehand is arguably more intense. You have to watch the shikiri, the pre-match posturing. They stomp their feet high into the air. The shiko, which again is Shinto in origin, meant to physically crush evil spirits into the earth.
Yes, the stomping.
They throw the salt, they crouch down, place their fists on the dirt, and just glare at each other, trying to break their opponent's focus. Sometimes this staring contest goes on for 4 solid minutes before they finally collide for a 3-second match.
The psychology is paramount because the margin for error is 0. A single slip on the clay, a momentary lapse in concentration, and the match is over.
Now, let's say a traveler fails to get tickets to the Ryogoku Kukugikan. The tournament is sold out. How do they interact with this ancient world? Because you can't just walk into a sumo stable and say hello. They're highly closed environments.
The most accessible and culturally significant entry point is culinary. You must engage with chankanabe.
The sumo hot pot. It sounds like a gimmick, but it's actually the nutritional foundation of the sport, isn't it?
It is the absolute caloric engine of the athletes. Chankanabe is a massive, incredibly dense stew made of a dashi or chicken broth base, loaded with massive quantities of protein and vegetables. Historically, the protein was strictly chicken.
Chicken? Why only chicken?
The logic here is highly superstitious. A chicken stands on 2 legs, representing a victorious wrestler remaining on their feet. A cow or a pig stands on 4 legs, which symbolizes a wrestler whose hands and knees have touched the dirt in defeat. Before a major tournament, eating 4-legged animals was considered bad luck.
I love how even the diet is governed by superstition. But modern Chanko has evolved. Around the Ryogoku district, there are dozens of incredible restaurants run by retired sumo wrestlers, and they serve variations with pork, beef, and seafood.
Yeah, it's branched out.
And interestingly, as dietary culture globally shifts, you can now find high-end vegan chankonabe in Tokyo. It perfectly illustrates how an ancient, rigidly traditional culture adapts just enough to survive in the modern era.
Beyond the culinary aspect, there are highly structured ways to witness the physicality of the sport. Certain tourist organizations arrange access to the Asakusa, the morning practice sessions at the sumo stables.
That sounds incredible.
It is, but it requires extreme discipline from the visitor. You sit on the tatami mats inches away from the clay ring in absolute pin-drop silence. You watch as these massive men perform grueling, repetitive conditioning drills for hours. You hear the sharp crack of flesh hitting flesh. You hear the harsh, ragged breathing. It strips away the pageantry of the tournament and exposes the brutal monastic dedication required to maintain that physique.
There are also some really fun interactive offshoots in areas like Ginza. You can book a Chankanabe dinner that includes exhibition matches. They have a smaller elevated ring, and retired wrestlers will demonstrate the techniques, explain the rules, and then they offer a sumo challenge.
Oh, the challenges are great.
They put audience members in padded fat suits and let them try to push a retired professional out of the ring. It's hilarious. But mechanically, when you put all your weight into a man, and he literally does not move an inch, it provides a visceral understanding of their sheer structural density.
And if a visitor is incredibly fortunate, they might be in Tokyo during a Denpatsushiki, a formal retirement ceremony.
Right, the top knot cutting.
The shonmai, the elaborate top knot styled to look like a ginkgo leaf, is the defining physical symbol of a wrestler's identity. They sleep with it, they fight with it. When a high-ranking wrestler retires, they rent out the main stadium. The wrestler sits in the center of the ring in formal kimono.
Just a huge event.
Hundreds of people, sponsors, family members, rivals, and stablemates line up. Each person takes a pair of gold-plated scissors and snips a single strand of hair. Finally, the stablemaster, the oyakata, steps up and makes the final decisive cut, severing the top knot completely.
That is a profound psychological severance. They're literally cutting away his identity as a warrior in front of 10,000 people.
It is an intensely emotional ritual. You frequently see massive, stoic men breaking down in tears. It is a powerful reminder that sumo is not merely an athletic career. It is an all-encompassing lifestyle, deeply intertwined with Shinto spirituality.
So we have dissected the Golden Week logistics, the spiritual centrifuge of the Matsuri shrines, and the sacred, brutal clay of the sumo tournament. You understand the what and the why of May in Tokyo?
But there's a catch.
Always a catch. None of this matters if you fail the test of the streets. Tokyo is a highly optimized social machine, and the cultural etiquette is the lubricant that keeps it from tearing itself apart. Ignorance of the local physics of behavior causes massive friction. We need to go through the survival guide.
The rules of engagement in Japan are not arbitrary polite suggestions. They are deep-seated structural norms. Violating them doesn't just make you look like a tourist, it actively disrupts the social harmony.
Rule number 1 is the most jarring for Westerners: the anomaly of the trash. Imagine this, you are walking through Asakusa during Sanja Matsuri. You just finished eating a stick of grilled yakitori and a plastic cup of shaved ice.
Classic festival food.
Right. You have a sticky wooden skewer and an empty cup in your hands. You look around for a public trash can. You look on the next corner. You look inside the subway station. There are 0 public waste bins anywhere.
This absence is a direct result of a specific historical trauma. In 1995, the Akam Shinrikyo doomsday cult executed a coordinated domestic terrorist attack, releasing deadly sarin gas into the Tokyo subway system.
A horrible tragedy.
In the immediate aftermath, as a security countermeasure against concealed explosives or chemical agents, the government permanently removed the vast majority of public waste receptacles across the country.
And what's fascinating is that instead of the streets turning into a landfill, they remained immaculate.
That is due to the psychological concept of motenai, a sense of regret over waste, combined with a fierce civic duty to maintain the wa, or public harmony. The societal contract shifted immediately. Your waste is your personal responsibility. You do not impose the burden of your trash onto the public sphere or a private business. You carry it with you until you return to your own home or your hotel room.
So how do you hack this as a tourist? Because walking around for 10 hours holding a sticky yakitori skewer is miserable. The absolute best piece of gear you can buy is a reusable, foldable grocery bag. Specifically, the engineering marvel known as the shupato bag.
The shupato is brilliant. The name itself is an onomatopoeia for the sharp, snappy sound it makes when you pull both ends.
Shupat.
Exactly. It's constructed with accordion-style pleats so that it instantly collapses into a tight roll the size of a golf ball, but it expands into a highly durable tote. You deploy the shupato, drop your wrappers and empty bottles into it, and stow it in your day pack. It insulates your clean gear from your trash, and you simply empty it into the sorted bins back at your hotel.
Rule number 2 requires us to look at the architecture of hygiene, the shoe rule. Now, skipping the obvious, everyone knows you take your shoes off in a Japanese apartment, but the philosophy of removing shoes goes way beyond basic cleanliness. It's rooted in the structural concept of uchi and soto.
Uchi represents the inside, the clean, the safe, the intimate. Soto represents the outside, the dirty, the public chaos. The physical boundary between these two realms is the Genkan, the sunken entryway found in homes, traditional ryokan inns, temple halls, and tatami mat restaurants. When you step up from the Genkan onto the elevated floor, you're crossing a psychological and hygienic threshold.
Right, and the mechanics of crossing that threshold are specific. You don't just kick your sneakers off into a pile. When you remove your shoes, you must turn them around so the toes are pointing back toward the door you just entered.
It's just polite.
It demonstrates situational awareness and indicates that you are prepared to leave cleanly without disrupting the flow of the entryway. But there is a massive trap here for summer travelers. In May, it might be 80 degrees, so you are wearing sandals or flip-flops. You walk into a temple or a high-end sushi restaurant with a tatami mat floor, you take your sandals off, and you step onto the woven straw mat in your bare feet.
That is a severe breach of hygiene. Tatami mats are incredibly porous and difficult to clean. Walking barefooted, depositing sweat and street dust directly onto the sacred or dining surface is considered highly offensive.
So the tactical move is to carry a fresh, clean pair of lightweight ankle socks in your day pack at all times. The moment you approach a genkan and realize you need to ditch your sandals, you pull out the clean socks and slip them on. It immediately signals to the host that you understand the boundary between Soto and Ichi.
This adaptability extends to the general dress codes of the city. Tokyo is a city of extreme compartmentalization.
The juxtaposition is wild. At 2 p.m., you are in the working-class alleys of Asakusa, sweating, dodging a 1-ton mikoshi surrounded by guys shouting in loincloths. You are wearing breathable, athletic gear and sneakers.
Naturally.
But at 7 p.m., you take a 20-minute subway ride to the Ginza district, or Roppongi Hills, for a high-end dinner. The environment completely shifts. Ginza is the apex of refined, cosmopolitan luxury. If you attempt to enter a high-end cocktail bar or a fine dining establishment wearing the shorts and running shoes you wore to the Matsuri, the maitre d' will intercept you at the door.
And they will not let you in.
They will politely but immovably deny you entry based on a smart, casual dress code.
You must build temporal buffers into your itinerary. You cannot treat Tokyo as a single uniform environment. You need to schedule time to return to your hotel, to literally wash off the soda, the outside chaos, and change into appropriate evening attire before engaging with the upscale nightlife.
And that brings us to the final and perhaps most contradictory survival rule, the physics of currency. Tokyo projects an aura of science fiction. You have bullet trains, automated robotic cafes, and toilets with control panels that look like the space shuttle. But underneath that digital veneer, the day-to-day economy is stubbornly analog. Japan is deeply, fundamentally cash-based.
The penetration of credit cards and Apple Pay is increasing in major department stores and convenience chains, where you can use your IC transit cards like Suica or Pasmo to buy a coffee.
Right.
But the moment you engage with the cultural events we've been discussing, the moment you step up to a yakitori stall at the Kanda Matsuri, or try to buy an amulet at a small neighborhood shrine, or travel to the Chichibu Mountains to escape Golden Week, your titanium credit card becomes a useless piece of metal.
The economics of small vendors demand physical yen. If you are buying a 300 yen skewer of meat from a street stall and you try to hand the vendor a 10,000 yen note, which is roughly equivalent to a $100 bill, you are creating a massive logistical problem for them.
It's terrible form.
You instantly drain their float of small change. It's considered highly inconsiderate. The tactical approach is to constantly break your large bills at major convenience stores like 7-Eleven or Family Mart and stockpile 100 yen coins, 500 yen coins, and 1,000 yen bills in a dedicated coin purse. When you hit the festival circuit, you operate entirely on exact or near exact physical change.
It also grounds you in the tactile reality of the culture. Handing a heavy 500 yen coin over a wooden counter for a bowl of noodles connects you to the transaction in a way that tapping a smartphone does not. It slows the interaction down, which is often the point.
So let's step back and look at the massive architectural blueprint of the month we've just laid out. We started by calculating the sheer physics and social engineering of the Golden Week mass migration, utilizing the Takuban luggage network to slip through the logistical bottlenecks.
We examined the profound theological syncretism of the Sanja Matsuri, breaking down the kinetic energy of Tamafuri and how violently shaking a 1-ton Shinto shrine activates ancient spirits. We contrasted that with the municipal economics of the Kanda Matsuri Shadow Festival.
We stood at the edge of the sacred clay dohyo to understand the May Grand Sumo tournament, from the terrifying career cliff of the Benzook ranking system to the biomechanics of a 300-pound Yurikiri force out, all the way to the emotional severance of the top knot cutting ceremony. And we armed you with the behavioral physics of the streets. Jupato bags for the Om Shinrikyo trash paradox, clean socks for the Uchi boundaries, and heavy coins for the analog economy.
It is a month that brutally punishes the unprepared traveler, but offers an unparalleled depth of historical immersion for those who understand the mechanics at play.
And that leaves us with a final, lingering thought to process. We opened this deep dive by contrasting the neon lights and robotic efficiency of Tokyo with its ancient roots. But it's more than just a contrast, it's a deliberate choice. Every single May, this hyper-advanced society, this beacon of technological acceleration, actively chooses to halt its progress.
They pause.
It chooses to sweat, to bleed, to heave one-ton wooden boxes through the streets, and to throw purifying salt onto the earth. It is a beautiful, stubborn refusal to let the past die. And as our own societies relentlessly automate, digitize, and rush blindly toward the future, we have to ask ourselves, what ancient physical rituals are we choosing to hold on to? What heavy, awkward, sacred things are we still willing to carry on our shoulders? And what does the weight of those things say about who we really are?
A vital question for any modern culture.
Thank you for joining us on this massive deep dive into Tokyo in May 2026. Keep pulling on the threads of history, keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you, and seriously, never forget the clean